Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. Hope you are having a great webinar, an interesting one. My name is Agustina Zilifan. I'm from Argentina. I'm currently the local pharmacovigilance manager for Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay in Beringer Ingelheim. So will be speaking to you today on the pharmacovigilance regulations in these countries. Um, so I hope you find it useful. My objectives in this webinar is to communicate the regulatory requirements of pharmacovigilance in these countries, to understand the challenges, and to identify the processes or requirements that are not found in the regulations. So let's start with local health authorities so you get to know them. In Argentina, we have ANMAT, which is the National Administration of Medicines, Food, and Medical Technology, with the specific pharmacovigilance department. In Paraguay, we have the Ministry of Public Health with a specific sanitary surveillance department, which is the pharmacovigilance one. And in Uruguay, we have as well the Ministry of Public Health with a specific pharmacovigilance department. So, what do our regulations say about the PV responsible person? Let's start with Argentina. Our main regulation is the 5358, which is effective from 2013. So let's say it's not new. And there is a PV responsible person section, specific section, where all the responsibilities of this role are mentioned. I will not be speaking about them all. I want just to point out the two which I found most interesting for you to know, which mentions there has to be a specific PV responsible person and a designated backup in the country. And another important issue is that a medical degree is not necessary. So a life science degree is enough to be a PV responsible person in Argentina, as long as the responsible person has access to a medically qualified person, which is usually covered by the medical director. That's why I am a nutritionist and I am the PV responsible person for Argentina. So moving on to Paraguay, the regulation mentions a qualified professional should be designated to be in charge of the PV tasks, and this person should also act as a link between the lab and the regulatory authority. The designation of this professional should be communicated to the authority with a specific form, which also covers not only the PV responsible person, but its backup. So it is really organized in Paraguay. And in Uruguay, we have this ordinance that we can see here, the 798 from 2014. And although there's no much specifications mentioned, the local health authority requests the be responsible person and backup to be in Uruguay and not handled from another country. This is an update which I found out last year during the past years. Usually Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay are taken as a cluster, and sadly for the other countries handled from Argentina. But the local health authority requests for the PV responsible person and its backup to be in the country in Uruguay. So we have to have a responsible person there, even though it may be handled from another country. So moving on to who's expected to report in Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, we're all expected to report. Public and private institutions, health team professionals, patients and relatives of patients, and pharmaceutical industries, of course. I have made screenshots in here of our online forms to report. The first one is from Argentina, the second one, Paraguay, and the third one, Uruguay. So online reporting is offered for anyone. And MAT, which is Argentina's local health authority, also offers a paper form to be submitted via email. And all these online forms have specific guidance to help people, mostly patients, identify the specific information expected from the health authority for each field. As I mentioned in the slide, there are some fields that are mandatory to be able to send this report, this online form. So we need the patient information, initials, age, or date of birth and sex. the adverse reaction, a brief description, and the start date as mandatory fields. And regarding the medication, we have the name and the start date of the treatment as mandatory fields. If you want, if you need the links, if you find it useful, you can request them to me. I have them, of course. So moving on to post-marketing ICSR reporting, which is a really what we mostly do, or it takes our time in pharmacovigilance for post-marketing ICSR reporting. Let's start with Argentina. We have our provision 5358, which I mentioned from 2013 before. It is really extensive. I could dedicate the time I have left to talk about these submissions. I have prepared actually 3 different slides to show only Argentina's post-marketing ICSR reporting. As you can see in the slides, there are various types of reports categorized by NMAT, and each one has a different due date. So if you are planning to submitting information to NMAT for the first time, it can certainly be challenging. What's important to mention about Argentina is that it is the only country within Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay that accepts XML files via E2B R2 reporting. So it is really time effective for the labs that can actually do it. This option is mostly used by multinational labs, and it's not used by national ones. So that's why we have the online platform, which I showed you before, as a backup option. So you can see the different types of adverse events that I categorized by NMAT. We have suspicion of serious adverse events, non-serious, fatal life-threatening, drug exposure during pregnancy, with and without adverse event with different due dates. Moving on to quality deviations with serious events, non-serious events, medication errors with serious adverse events, non-serious, and without adverse reactions. So they are all really detailed in this provision, and the due dates are actually quite different. So what you have to be really vigilant to be reporting to NMAT. And we have a special one for vaccines as well, of course, with suspicion of serious adverse reactions, non-serious, drug exposure during pregnancy with adverse reaction and with not, and with all of them specific due dates. So Paraguay, although we have to submit only serious and non-serious, these are the categories that Paraguay mentions, although they don't count with a specific ordinance in which due dates are specified. Serious adverse event reactions should be reported within 7 days after receiving the information, and non-serious adverse reactions should be submitted within 30 days. We have the online platform that I showed you before, and also paper submissions. And as per Uruguay, we count with a specific legislation which mentions specific due dates for serious, for fatal, and for non-serious. We have fatal cases that have to be submitted within 24 hours, serious 48, and non-serious 15 working days within the online platform. So clinical trial reporting. In Argentina, we have a special regulation, which is a 6677 from 2010. And as you can see, we have to report both national and international SUSARs to UNMAT, local health authority, within the 10 working days, and prepare a line listing of SUSARs to be presented on a 6-monthly report via TAD, which is an online platform to submit specific papers, and also via email. In Paraguay, there is no specific legislation, but according to a manual of good pharmacovigilance of Americas, it is recommended that the sponsor must immediately inform all the SUSARs and DSUR reports. And in Uruguay, only national SUSARs should be reporting within 2 calendar days, and a 3 monthly SUSAR line listing should be presented. It is important to mention that Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, as I mentioned before, is usually taken as a cluster, and CTs are usually performed in Argentina rather than in Paraguay and Uruguay. So these submissions in Paraguay and Uruguay are highly irregular. So, um, periodic safety reports. Okay, starting with Argentina, we do have to submit periodic safety reports. The local PSURs should be presented with the periodicity established in our regulation, which is the same that I've been mentioning before, the 5358. In accordance with international due dates or periodicity requested by NMAT's PB department in particular cases. You can find here the periodicity that it's found in this provision. And any modification that the industry must make of the frequency of submission must be approved by them. So we have to submit them via this online platform, which is TAD. As far as our format, a local form should be completed and submitted via TAD platform, online platform, including local information such as units sold, number of exposed patients, number of notifications to the local health authority, literature research, summary of the adverse reactions detected during the period of the PSUR, and quality deviation. So it's quite extensive. Okay, Paraguay, although it is not mentioned in a specific resolution from Paraguay, a new updated periodic safety report must be prepared, taking into account the specifications regarding the content of the report and the international date of registration of the drug for its periodicity of notification, which will be every 6 months during the first 2 years, every year for the next 3 years, and then every 5 years. Before this COVID situation, these PSURs were submitted paper format, but now they have adapted quickly into email. So in Paraguay, we can send the PSURs via email. And last but not least, Uruguay, we should present PSURs by request of the health authority majorly. We should present also with extension of registration of a certain product, but mostly by request of the health authority, and we do have to present them via paper format. Okay. A little bit about risk management plans. We do have specific degrees and regulatory documents in each country. As you can see, we have prepared a specific table for mentioning which molecules or which product need an RMP, which is a new molecule, biological, similar, biosimilar, and when does it have to be submitted, and if it has to be in paper file or online platform. But I think the most important question here is, when should I update an RMP? So in Argentina, we have to update it with the request for approval of important changes in the product, for example, such as risks, the potential or identified risks or missing information, and of course, at initiative of the marketing authorization holder, and if the authority requires it to. In Paraguay, it's not specified. And in year Y, we have to present RMPs for those who have additional pharmacovigilance on a yearly basis, if it is applicable. Else, a sworn declaration of the technical director is presented if there's no changes in the product-specific information. So an yearly documentation has to be presented. Either it's the RMP update or this sworn declaration. I hope you can see the picture. I don't know if it's really quality, but you can see Argentina requiring a local format for presenting the RMPs, as well as Paraguay, and Uruguay accepts the core RMP from the company. Let me just say that although Uruguay accepts core RMPs, we do have to present an additional annex with specific information, which is not included in this core document. So last to finish, Coming to the end of my presentation on Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay's PV regulations, I find it really important to discuss the challenges we face. To begin with, some submissions are not specified in detail in the available regulations in Paraguay and Uruguay. And on the other hand, we come with a very specific and detailed regulation for Argentina, which can also be challenging. We still have some paper submissions, although after this COVID situation, some of them were moved to email or online platforms. And another thing I have to say is that national labs do not use the XML files being sent by E2B R2 and do not have automated systems. And as I mentioned before, E2B were accepted in Argentina, and it's really amazing and time effective. On the good sides, we have a really good communication with our local health authorities. They're really approachable. The reviews and feedbacks and the submissions are really agile, and they have easily adapted to the email submissions during the health emergency situation. So to finish, my conclusion is that although there's a really good communication with the health authorities, the digitalization of the submissions could speed up the process for both parties involved. So every time we encounter with a challenge, there's always an opportunity for growth. So that's a really good side. And that's all from my side. I hope you found it useful.